All right, over to you, Karen.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to this workshop on advanced care planning and understanding grief along the way. Just a couple of introductory comments. If you have to come and go within the workshop, that's perfectly fine, of course. If you have any questions, I believe Beth said that she would be monitoring them, and you can stop me at any time and we can address your question at that time. I'm going to present like I would present uh, in the community in terms of the style of the presentation. The reason I'll tell you the reason I took your names, that if we were together in person, I would call upon you in person during workshop. So I might do that during this meeting just to say, so Beth, in your opinion, how do you feel about that, for example? And hopefully Beth would be comfortable enough to tell us how she would feel. Just a caveat, remember that most adults have a 15-minute attention span. And so part of your presentation is also to keep people focused on the workshop and then you on each other, not on the fact that they have to get groceries on the way home after the presentation. So you do your best to keep people engaged. So thank you for coming to the workshop, and we can move on from there. Okay. So welcome to the workshop, and I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are gathered on Mi'kma'ki, the unceded and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. In Mi'kmaq culture, the land is sacred and life is deeply connected to the natural world. We are all treaty people, carrying responsibility. So we are all treating people, carrying responsibilities not only to one another, but also to the land, water, and all living beings. As we come together to discuss advanced care planning, we honor the Mi'kmaq teaching about balance, respect, and the cycles of life and death. Planning for the future, especially when it comes to care and end-of-life decisions, is a way to uphold these values, ensuring that our choices reflect respect for ourselves, our families, and our communities. We thank the Mi'kmaq people for their stewardship of this land and invite everyone here to approach these conversations with openness, humility, and respect. My role tonight is to be as a volunteer working with the Nova Scotia Hospice Palliative Care Association to provide information regarding the process of advanced care planning. Very important to remember in this capacity, I am not providing legal and or medical advice. So as far as the guidelines are concerned, you are encouraged to ask questions and participate. Again, only if you feel comfortable doing so. And if I call upon you and you're not comfortable to respond, that's just fine. I'll move along to somebody who I think would. And I'm counting on Margie and Beth. The next point is really important. Please be respectful of others. We'll be discussing personal values, beliefs, and experiences. And um, it's really important to not judge each other. We all come from different backgrounds, but we're all here today because we want to learn about advanced care planning, but also to work with our community in this very important topic. Feel free to share what you've learned after the workshop, but please do not share anyone else's personal stories or information outside this group. There's an old saying in Canada and the United States, what goes on in Vegas stays in Vegas. So if we could just remember that people are sharing tonight with the understanding that this is a private gathering and that's not for public consumption. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay. So tonight, what we're hoping to do is to get you to think about advanced care planning. This is it can be a tough topic in terms of talking about grief. And some of us have had more recent experiences with grief than others. So it might be a little bit more raw for folks. Let's just all be sensitive about that. We're going to talk about and explain the 5 steps of advanced care planning, and also to problem solve and help us help you to plan to start conversations about advanced care planning with the people who matter most to you. I like to tell stories now and then, so I was out and about, and actually it was during the height of the fires down here, and there was a gentleman at a garage that I was at who was in fear of his house and his belongings. And we were in the waiting room and we got to talking. And we just talked about making sure you had the most important documents in the car and those kinds of things. And he was telling me about his personal situation. And I couldn't help myself, but I said, do people know what you want? Do people know what you want in case something happens and you're not able to speak for yourself? And he started to, think about it, and then he said, you know what, I think they do. I said, you know what would be a good idea is to talk to your son. That was the person that was most important in his life, to make sure that he knows what your wishes are. And we actually had a 10-15 minute conversation about it in the waiting room of a garage. So these things can just pop up in your day-to-day life as well. We also want you to start to think about choosing a substitute decision maker for yourself. And again, that was the conversation that I was having with this gentleman who didn't have a significant other. His parents were no longer with us. And so, yeah, he said, yeah, I guess that would be my son. So that's important for us to make those decisions as well. So when we're working in the community with our fellow citizens, we can help them come to that decision. Okay. Why is it important to talk about grief? Before we get moving on this one, does anybody have any ideas? And please just come on and tell us why you think we need to talk about grief, regardless of the slide in front of you. Anybody want to share their thoughts about that?
Well, I would say it definitely helps the healing process if we talk about it.
Yes, very important. Anyone else?
Be Margie. Oh, you're on mute, Margie, sorry.
Is Margie's muted?
She's trying to unmute.
It did that on its own. I think I didn't touch it. Anyway, you were asking about why it's important to talk about grief, and isn't that what it was? Yes.
Yeah, that's
So
what it was.
I think it's also important because it kind of opens the door for family to say, it's reality. We don't have to talk about it like I'm going to face it tomorrow or you're going to face it tomorrow, but it's just something that we need to chat about, like many things we do in life. And once you kind of have that first conversation without any panic to it, then all of a sudden it's easier the second time and then easier again the third time. So, and I think people do want to chat about it more than once. So that's why I think we should talk about it, get the first time started. Kind of
I like that point. I like that point, Margie. People want to talk about it more than once. I think that's a great point. Yeah.
It is.
And sometimes we'll get our head in difference. The first time we talk about it, we might be a little hesitant, but the second time it becomes easier, and the third time, you're right. Absolutely.
And it is for the other person as well.
Okay.
If we start a conversation about it, then the next time it's easier to talk about it for both sides.
Okay. Anybody else have any ideas why it's important for us to feel comfortable to talk about grief? Or for yourself?
Because it's normal, like to normalize something that everybody deals with. And it's, to kind of build language and capacity around processing the emotions that you're dealing with when you experience grief, and to know that it can be as much for a lost, relationship as it is for a divorce or for, a miscarriage or things that people have to go through in order to process it.
Is it Rachel or Rochelle?
Rochelle.
Rochelle. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for that, Rochelle. Okay, let's go back to the slide about grief. Okay, so for us, it's important to talk about grief because in these workshops, um, advanced care planning often brings up grief for the person planning, families, friends, and caregivers. Let's face it, this is a sensitive topic. We're asking people to think about things that some people may not be comfortable thinking about, and B, some of us haven't talked about this before. So it's really good for us to talk about grief, to be prepared. And as Rochelle said, grief can occur for a variety of reasons and is a natural response to changes in health, identity, independence, or relationships. You do not need to be seriously ill to experience grief, again, as Rochelle was talking about. So, and ignoring grief can make planning harder. Acknowledging it helps people feel seen and supported. Beth, can you read that last sentence for us, please?
Sure.
The last point.
Yeah, talking about grief creates space for empathy and clarity in decision making.
So that's a good point. But what does it mean? Does anybody want to analyze that in terms of their own understanding of what that point means? Nancy, do you want to tell us what you think that means for you? Rosalie, you want to think about what that means for you? What does space for empathy and clarity mean?
Sorry, it took me a minute to unmute.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I just, I think actually today, my husband and I were talking about how grief causes, we all have grief, as we've heard already, and not just because of death, but it really does cause us to grow and to be more empathetic toward one another. Now, the bit about clarity and decision making, I think that's why I'm here tonight, to learn a little bit more about that.
Oh, great. Thanks, Nancy.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to interpret that last point for us, for themselves?
I like how it says empathy because it's really, as we said, all of us experience grief, but the empathy side is putting ourselves in someone else's shoes as well, if you want to think of it that way. So I have my grief, but you all have your own grief, and I can feel for you and be empathetic towards you in your situation, while still having my own grief with things in my life as well.
Now, Diaman just made a note, and I really like it. It says it helps us to think calmly. I'm writing that one down. I really like that one. So it's important to understand grief and its impact on yourself and others, particularly when you're facilitating a workshop like this. And we'll go on to the next slide. What could grief look like in advanced care planning? Okay, so there's types of grief, and one is anticipatory grief. And I'm going to call on you, Margie, if you don't mind. Can you just review what anticipatory grief is?
You just want me to read what it says there?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, sadness or loss about the future. An example would be a change in the person's health, and that we're anticipating what else is going to happen. Or aging, as you see a parent perhaps get older, and you're worried about, so it's the worry and not aging or even ability of what people can do when family members see it. So that's a type of grief where we're worrying silently often because of what we see changing that is truly happening. And we worry about that.
Yep. Thanks, Margie. Bruno, would you mind going over what ambiguous loss is?
Yeah, it's grieving someone who is physically present but emotionally or mentally changed.
Can you think of an example?
If someone close to you is going through the first few stage of dementia. Maybe that could be an
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. And Rochelle, can you go through disenfranchised grief for us?
Grief that feels unacknowledged or unsupported due to the stigma or silence.
Okay. Any examples that people might?
Like when my grandmother passed away, my mom was very close with my dad's mother. For years and years and years, they were each other's best friends. When my grandmother died, my dad's family, mourned the loss of their mother. But my mother didn't really feel supported at all because it was her mother-in-law and not her mom. So even though she lost somebody who was very near and dear to her, she felt very outside of the family grieving pattern and felt more of a support to people rather than someone who needed to be supportive. And I think she actually got really resentful after that. So that's the example that I know.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Michelle. That's great. And the last one is cumulative grief. And this is grief from multiple or ongoing losses over time. And for those of us who are of a certain age, we were just talking about this the other day, that we're sending out more sympathy cards than we are birthday cards. And that's part and parcel of the process of aging. Your friends and family age with you. And sometimes, and it can be a tough time, and particularly if you lose 2 or 3 people who are close to you over a certain, say, a year, for example. It's important to acknowledge that it's been a tough year for sure, and that you've suffered some losses that it would be great to chat about, and I think, as Rochelle was talking about, acknowledge. So, all right. Anybody else have any comments about the types of grief or examples, or their own examples? All right, Beth.
I was just going to add, with stigmatized grief, often maybe someone who's been lost from suicide could be something that there's stigma along with that, and they may feel that disenfranchised grief because of how they lost their person.
Thank you. That's a really good example. Okay, so what helps? Margie, can you talk about the very first point in terms of what helps?
Naming and normalizing grief, letting people know their feelings are valid. I think that's so important, because when people are grieving, it's tough enough, but to have somebody support them in it and be able to say your feelings, because I think a lot of people don't want to really share their true feeling inside. They just say, I'm so sad, because that's what's expected. It's a normal feeling. Yeah. But to say other things and to let people know, I know this is happening. I think we've all gone through this at a time. Something happened and made us really sad, but it made us twice as sad because we were hiding other issues, perhaps that were underneath, that you never wanted to share with people. And then to normalize it and have somebody acknowledge you and validate you for doing that is really important.
Okay. Thanks, Margie. Mary, would you be comfortable in talking about the second, just reading off the second point and tell us what that means to you?
Yes, certainly. Making space for emotions. It's okay to feel sad, uncertain, or overwhelmed during these conversations. I think sometimes when people have held things in for a long time and they're in a circumstance where they're made to feel it's okay to express themselves, sometimes, and I have witnessed this myself, people can be almost overwhelmed with getting out the burden that they carry on their chest, that they've carried around for a long time, maybe, and didn't ever feel they were in the right place or time to express it. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important for people to know that, that we empathize and that it's okay to feel what we always typically used to think of as bad emotions. There's no such thing as a bad emotion. There are emotions. But for a long time, especially people of my generation and years ago, You didn't talk about certain things. You didn't acknowledge certain feelings. You sucked it up and you got on with life. And that's very hard on people. So I think it's really important to have a space where people can express how they feel and or not express, not everyone can or will, but that people feel okay with it one way or the other.
Oh, great point. Great point. Vicky, do you feel, are you comfortable with reading the next point and letting us know how you feel about that?
Connecting with support through grief counselors, spiritual care, peer groups, or trusted individuals.
Okay.
You can ask for help from different groups to talk about your grief, your bad mood.
Okay, great. And one of the points that we'll really emphasize in advanced care planning as we move along is the piece about trust and trusted individuals.
Yeah.
So that's really significant. Thank you. And Charlie, are you comfortable with reading and reviewing the last point here?
Recognition the emotional weight of planning, preparing for future care often brings up deeper reflection, concern, and care for others.
Okay. So when we get into advanced care planning, we need to be mindful of these points as far as how they're going to impact individuals that we encounter, whether one-on-one or in groups. Thanks, everyone. That was great. We'll go on to the next slide. Okay, so what is advanced care planning? So Rochelle, would you go through this for us, if you could read that for us?
Advanced care planning, or ACP, is a lifelong process of thinking about what matters to you, your values, goals and preferences, and the care that you would like to receive at any age or stage of your adult life. ACP is also about talking to the people who matter to you most and to your healthcare professionals about your wishes.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask all of you just to think about this. For those of us who are lucky enough to have a healthcare provider of any stripe, do they know what your wishes are if you can't speak for yourself? Does your doctor know? Does your nurse practitioner know? Yeah, I know when I used to work in long-term care homes and with older folks, we definitely would have these conversations in the sense of what's on the file and what do people want and those kinds of things. But for those of us who don't see ourselves as seniors yet, or those of you who aren't, it's a question you need to think about and talk to the healthcare provider about. Do they know what you would want if they're at your bedside and you can't speak for yourself? Just something to write down and say, oh, I need to do that, if you'd like. This is a quick caveat on an aside, so I'm going to just step out of my role as a presenter just to say, when you're doing the planning, the advanced care planning workshops, if you could say advanced care planning versus ACP, even though it's on the screen, I think that that's a good idea. Sometimes when we get into ACP, people say, well, what the heck is that? So just keep saying advanced care planning if you can throughout the workshop. Okay.
Can I
thanks,
say
Rochelle.
something?
Yeah, sure.
I couldn't agree more. I find that we use acronyms for so many things now. And oftentimes I'm just reading online or whatever, and I have to go look up what that string of capital letters stand for. And
Okay,
that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Let's say advanced care planning instead of ACP.
Okay, yeah. Okay, great. Thanks. All right. Advanced care planning is part of life planning. And so I'm just going to ask people, Mary, for example, if you don't mind, what do you think life planning is?
Life planning has to be part of how we live our lives. I mean, we all I'm retired now, but during my working life, like you had your life insurance and you had your bank accounts and everything, and you know, like it's really important to have a planned life, not just to go along without plans. So, you know, things like your estate planning, we do our taxes every year. Everybody does all of these things. Well, not everybody doesn't do them all, but we should be doing all of these all the time. And from
Okay.
my experience, like I did advanced care planning well over 20 years ago, I'm sure, because I worked in long-term care and I saw the
Oh.
effects of people not making plans. So my children know what my wishes are in under all kinds of different scenarios. And but you know, one good point that you made, I'm not sure that my family doctor knows what I want, but I have an appointment with her next week and she's going to find out.
Good for
Oh,
you.
that's great. That's great. How about you, Julie? What's life planning? What does that mean to you personally?
Well, it means, I think, being organized and being comfortable with considering end of life options. It also, I think, involves the sharing, you know, the last 4 or 5 slides, I kept thinking, you know, end of life is a very human event. And I think the more that we share it, the more we feel heard and listened to, and the more that we can work together. And I think all of that is part of advanced care planning.
So I have another story for you, and sorry about my stories, but I worked in a big city downtown hospital, which can be pretty wild and crazy at times. Anyway, we had this situation where a gentleman who was in his 40s had a horrific accident, and really he was not going to recover. And we were looking at him dying. So he had not had anything, he had not put anything in writing anywhere about, you know, what to do in case this happened. And in his family group, they were, some of his family were very, very religious, yeah, very evangelical. And one of his aunties had found out that they were considering end of life activities in terms of taking him off the respirator, etc. And she was quite upset and gathered a variety of folks to come down to the hospital to make her position known, that in no way, shape, or form should anyone interfere in this process, that he shouldn't be taken off the ventilator. Anyway, long story short, his wife and his 2 children, who at that time were around 19, so they were really young adults, had the conversation with him about what if. And because of that conversation, they were able to move forward with his wishes, because he had shared them with his family, his nuclear family, his immediate family. Not to discount what his auntie wanted and his extended family wanted, but this is what he wanted. So while he hadn't written anything down, he had made a plan and had shared his wishes with his family, which made it all that much easier for everyone. And advanced care planning is not just for end of life. It could be somebody is unconscious because they've fallen and they may not be able to speak for themselves. So it's, again, what do I want to happen in my life? What's my plan should these circumstances arise for me? And those are the questions that you want to ask yourself and want to ask your family. And this advanced care planning is life planning, and is a good way to open the door about, you know, we plan for our, you know, our vacations, we plan for our schooling. Though let's plan for our health, and part of planning for our health is advanced care planning. Any questions or comments about that? Okay, next slide, please, Beth. Okay, so this is really important in terms of when choosing a substitute decision maker. And Margie, if you could handle this slide in terms of who should we choose to be our substitute decision maker?
Right. Well, I usually, when I'm doing a presentation, I usually say how important this is. And it means more than one conversation. It means maybe several conversations. And sometimes I give them the example of I have 2 children, and I had this conversation with my own children and talked about the futures. We talked about other things, like we were just talking about wills and things like that. And I talked to my children about that. So when it came time to talk about health decisions, I asked them about, if I make a plan, which one of you do you think is strongest? I felt I knew, but I wanted to include both of them. When you only have 2, you kind of don't want to be picking one for more than the other. They're both important opinions. So, but as soon as I brought it up and started to talk about it, my son said right away, Mom, my sister, my daughter, Alana, is certainly the one that needs to do that. And because she doesn't get as stressed as I would about dealing with that, she would feel more comfortable talking to doctors and nurses and making appointments and hearing about what decision would be best if I wasn't able to speak for myself. And sometimes there's car accidents. And so you need to think on hand and deal with stress and points like that that are really important. So when you pick your decision maker, don't just pick the oldest in the family. Make sure everybody knows who your decision maker is, because there's nothing worse. I use this as an example. 5 children in a family, and mom talks to the middle daughter, feels she's the strongest, and maybe because she's a healthcare worker or something, whatever they just, and chooses her and doesn't tell other family members. And when something does happen and she kind of takes over and start making decisions, it does feel like you're excluding your very own family. So I say to them, think about it, sit with them, with your family members, and say the things that you think are important, dealing with the specialists, dealing with doctor's appointment. Even time is important. One of the reasons my son wouldn't do it is just because he works out at sea. He's not always available. And so, he said, what would I do if I got a call or they tried to get in touch with me and I couldn't? And so there's really a lot of reasons to think about who's the best decision maker. And I talked to them about that, and right away my son said, no, I'm definitely not the person for that. And my daughters and I and he and my husband agreed that it would be our daughter that would be the decision maker.
So I'm just going to jump in here, Margie. That's a really good point about somebody who's available.
Yes.
Like really sensible point. And in terms of trying to choose someone, one of the things that the law is really clear about, it has to be a capable adult.
Yes.
It can't be your favorite grandchild. It has to be a capable adult.
Yes.
And this is really important. Will honor your wishes, even if they are different from your own.
Yes, and I make sure I say that in the workshop. They have to be open to doing it, and they have to make sure they carry out the wishes of the person that owns.
To finish off this page, Margie, sure. The person is calm in a crisis.
Yes.
Is able to handle conflict or disagreement. And we all know that there can occasionally be conflict in families.
Yes.
And even sometimes it might be, a joke within the family, but when you get to some serious situations, it's really important that you have somebody who can, stand their ground and say, no, this is what Karen wanted.
Yes.
And regardless of what you think, this is what Karen wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And the important thing, and again, Margie said, is accessible and able to commit the time that might be required.
I even use the example of, if you have a son or daughter living out west, be sure that they can be included in what you want as far as knowing it. But it's very difficult if something happens at 2:00 or 2:00 here, but or it's the opposite, it's vice versa, 6:00 in the morning here and it's 2:00 there. And, you have to think about that space of time, even that people are not always, you get shaken out of bed and something happens and,
So
so
Julie,
distance.
So Julie, you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just thinking that I think decision maker also has to be somebody that is comfortable with health situations. In other words, they're not afraid of blood or pain, or that they're comfortable with health challenges.
Well, and absolutely. And here's the other piece too, is that they're comfortable in abiding by your wishes, which could mean the end of life of someone they love very much.
Yes.
So it can be a very, very tough thing. Anybody else have any comments or questions about that when choosing a substitute decision maker?
I
Yeah,
think too, if one person is, let's say, chosen or agrees out of a group of 4 or 5 people, and everybody knows about it beforehand, I think
Yeah.
that in and of itself can help diffuse conflicts or disagreements, because people
Right.
already know that this is the person that's discussed with mom and knows what mom wants. And I do think that a lot of times when families get into difficulties, it's because nobody's talked about it and no decisions have been made, and everybody has a different opinion, and everybody wants their opinion to be the one that's taken. You know what I mean? I think knowing beforehand who the person is and that kind of thing really helps helps make things a lot easier for all family members when you're in a crisis.
To calm the waters.
Yeah.
Okay, next slide, please, Beth. Why is advanced care planning important? Advanced care planning is important because we all know this. Life can change at any moment, in a heartbeat. Life can change. The more people know about your values, goals, and wishes, just like Mary was saying, the more they can help you to get the care you want. The earlier people have conversations about their wishes, the less anxious they are if they experience a health crisis. And that's all part of planning. It's all part of planning and to know if this would happen to me, this is, I've got my ducks in a row in terms of my sister will be there and make sure everybody does what I want them to do. Really important. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to open this up to all of you and ask if any of you, and especially folks who haven't had a chance to chat yet, do any of you have stories about the impact of having or not having engaged in advanced care planning on anyone you know? And what lessons did you learn from that experience?
This one's odd, but when we're talking about like the idea of the life planning model and how advanced care planning kind of falls into that, my dad had COVID a couple of years ago. Yeah, he eventually passed away from the effects of COVID in early 2021. But prior to his passing that summer, so the summer of 2020, I spent the summer with him. So I worked from his house. I spent time with him. I got him to tell me lots of stories. And because I knew he was in his 80s and his health was failing, I encouraged him to talk about like things that he wanted to happen in the case of his event, like his inevitable passing, right? But not in like a heavy way, because I didn't want to scare him and make him think that I was hoping he would die. I just wanted him to get comfortable. And I don't know that I knew
Sure.
that what we were doing was advanced care planning, but we had a lot of like really intimate conversations. So my dad had stepbrothers, half brothers and half sisters. My grandfather had other children that were not his wife's children. And my dad had relationships with these people. So I had asked my dad, when you pass, how do you want us to frame your obituary? Do you want those people included in the obituary? Like, do you want my aunts and uncles from that side of the family included? Because lots of my other family have a lot of turmoil and they don't have close relationships with them. They're very separate. And my father said, either put all of them in or don't put any of them in. Now, he's the oldest of 16 children. He was the eldest of 16 kids with his mom and dad. So when he said that, I obviously made a mental note. So months later, my dad does pass. My sisters and brothers and I sit around and we write out this obituary. And of course, you know, my aunt was like, what are you doing? Why are you including all those people? Because she wasn't privy to that conversation. It really wasn't her business. She was an aunt, not a sibling, not a child of his.
Right.
When I explained to her that we had had this conversation, she was very thrown off and taken aback and almost insulted that I was honoring my father's wishes. In hindsight, I wish I had encouraged him to explain that that's what he wanted to do to the rest of his siblings, so that we wouldn't have, I didn't anticipate that conflict. In my mind, it was, I'm doing what my daddy said he wanted me to do. So it's as simple as that, which I did, but it caused a ripple effect. And, you know, it's 2025, and only now are some of those fractures healing from people's feelings being hurt in that moment, because it took a lot of really tough conversations for me to have to say, listen, you know,
This is what he wanted.
this is what he wanted, period. It's not up for
Right.
discussion, but I do wish if I had known better, I would have encouraged him to explain that or be more open with other people about that. We could have avoided a whole lot of hurt feelings and rough conversations.
Rachel, first off, I just want to express my condolences to you on the loss of your dad. And thank you for sharing that really good story about, you know, the importance of people knowing that these conversations have taken place, that the person was involved in the conversations. That's what advanced care, that's what planning is. So thank you very much for that. Is there anyone else that has a story about being engaged in advanced care planning that they want to share?
Julie has her hand up.
Okay. All right.
Julie has her hand up.
Julie, you wanted to say?
Well, yeah, I have a story that I'll share. My mother died last December, and I had seen signs of dementia with her, and her care home saw signs of dementia for probably 2 years previously. And she took a fall, and she was put in the she was in the hospital. She was in emergency, and then was put in a dementia ward in the hospital with the plan of moving her into a 24-hour care. And I have two brothers, and my brothers and I were talking about Mom's situation, and we realized that she really had no, you know, had not made her wishes known. My dad had died 15 years before, and he was cremated. So the thought was that Mom too would be cremated. And so we decided to, in the hospital, talk to Mom about this. And she was certainly a bit confused, but it was very interesting because my one brother is a doctor, and so it was agreed that he would have the conversation with Mom. And he sat on one side of the bed. My other brother sat at the end of the bed, and I sat on the opposing side of the bed. And my doctor brother started the conversation. We were trying to find out, you know, if she wanted to be cremated and where she wanted her ashes, and she kept shaking her head and you know, saying no, and she really struggled to have this conversation. And she kept looking at me, and I thought, okay. And then, so every question my brother asked, she turned to me and looked at me, and so I spoke up, and I said, you know, and I was, I think I was more gentle and softer and more compassionate than my brother. And we did get some answers, and that was good. And I was very apologetic. You know, I'm sorry, we need to have this dialogue. But what did I learn from that experience? Well, I learned that listening and soft and gentle and really hearing what the person is saying was important. But along the same side of it, I think in a way I'm still processing it, but I think my brothers were really challenged with mom's situation, and they actually denied that she had dementia, even though medically she was diagnosed with dementia. And I just thought, these must be awful challenges when it comes to grief, and when it comes to, you know, trying to reconcile a life-changing event. And huge lessons learned from that 1 hour in the hospital room.
Thank you, Julie. That's, again, my condolences on the loss of your mom. All right, Beth, can we go to the next slide, please? This is really significant as Julie was talking and folks were sharing their experiences. I want to just throw this out to all of you. How many of you have done advanced care planning? And the reason I say that in terms of I want you to think about it is because there's a lot of people in this workshop tonight that are very young, according to my eyes. And the point is everyone should have advanced care planning, not just seniors, not just people who have a terminal illness. We all, life can change in a minute. So advanced care planning may be urgent for people who may have different views or beliefs than their own. In my own personal experience, one of my siblings was, according to their faith, was against cremation, but that's what my mom wanted. And so it was really important that I don't know if she ever shared that with them, but we all, those of us who talked to her about these things, we just basically said, this is what mom wanted. And they knew that that's what mom wanted and made it that much easier. And advanced care planning may be more urgent for people who've been diagnosed with a chronic condition that could affect their ability to communicate, in terms of Julie's experience with her mom, who had been diagnosed with dementia. So I asked the question, and you don't have to tell me, but I'm just hoping you said yes or no. And if it's yes, good for you. And if it's no, get cracking. You should get your advanced care planning done.
A good point there that what I'd like to share is, when I say to people, I have mine done, I share that at the workshops. And I tell them I have mine done and my husband does. Both of my children have a copy of what we wanted, and so does my doctor. But the reason is because I feel I can't do myself. I can't talk about advanced care planning and not make my own. I can't try it because I think it's that important. And I try to sell, I guess the idea is, get the importance out there of how much we need to do this. So I could not talk about that and not rightfully do my own. And so that's
for sure
what it encouraged me. Yeah.
Okay, so when is it the right time to do advanced care planning? Beth, could you go through the life's milestones, that left-hand side?
So life milestones may include if someone is getting married. That could also include not being married, but common law or being with someone for a long time. Buying a home, having children, if there's changes in personal relationships or changes in living situations as well. Okay, great. And on the other side is the column under health events. Bruno, could you just go through those 3 points there?
Sure. Like an upcoming surgery, being diagnosed with heart disease, or becoming increasingly frail. Great. Or just because, how's that? just to be part of your plan, right? To get so people know what you want if you can't speak for yourself. Okay, Beth, the next slide. How to do advanced care planning. Advanced care planning is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing process of thinking, talking, planning, and reviewing your plan. And so now we're going to review the 5 steps of advanced care planning. Okay. So advanced care planning is basically 5 steps. We need to think about it. We need to learn about it. We need to decide who's going to be our substitute decision maker. And again, somebody who's an adult, who will stay calm and do what you want, okay? And the other thing that's really important in terms of the steps of advanced care planning is to talk about it. As Rochelle gave us an example of, she had these conversations with her dad, but her dad didn't have these conversations with folks about his wishes, which, it causes, some people some anxiety, but it's important that people know that this was talked about. And if you can do it when things are calm, it's even better. And you don't have to write out an advanced care plan, but it's always nice to have your plan handy. And this is the advanced care planning in the document itself. And it doesn't even have to be that fancy, but it's good to have it written down. In my own situation, the last time I updated my will and those kinds of them, power of attorney, which was just this year, my lawyer actually just offered that as a service to do my personal directive, which I thought was great. It's all in one place. Okay, next. Okay, step 1, to think about it. Mary, could you go through step 1 for us, please?
Right? I had to go look to see where to turn on the audio. Yes, what step 1 is talking about what our values are, what makes life worth living, what is important to me, like what's a good day. And I think in terms of advanced care planning, if you're looking at a change in your status, in your health status, let's say, some people might say, I absolutely could not bear to be bedridden. If I'm bedridden, and anything happens. And other people will say, no, I want you to do everything possible to keep me as long as possible. And
Right.
you'll see people in the gamut, right? And it has to do with what makes how we think about our lives and what makes life worth living for us. So what do quality of life and comfort mean to you? It's really individual from one person to the next. So each person needs to say, well, I could bear this, but I couldn't bear that. Or,
That's good.
this kind of thing. That's what I think we're thinking about with this step 1.
Thanks, Mary. So now we'll go on to step 2. And Diaman, would you like to go through step 2 for us?
Yes, sure. Can you hear me properly?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Advanced care planning is not about making a laundry list of treatments you would or would not want same time in the future. Advanced care planning is about thinking about what's important to you and using the information to inform the health decisions you may make throughout your life.
Great, thanks, Diaman. And step number 3? Vicky, can you go through that for us?
Step 3. Decide. If you are unable to make a decision for yourself, you need someone to speak and decide for you. The person is your substitute decision maker.
Okay. And step 4, Charlie, would you
Step
like to go
4.
through that?
Yeah, of course. Step 4, talk. Think about the people who matter most to you. How well do they know you? It's important to talk about your wishes, so they know what's important to you, and because your wishes may change over time. Normalize think about it.
So normalize talking about it is something to make it less stressful. We talked about grief. It's important to keep channels open. It's important to talk. So this is a very important step, is that this is just part of life planning. Okay, step number 5. oh, sorry, step 4, conversation starters. I missed that. I apologize. The hardest part is starting the conversation. So you might want to start the conversation by saying, I need your help with something. Or I was thinking about what happened to so-and-so, and it made me realize that I should get my ducks in a row. Or somebody may want to talk to you about, right now I have stage 2 cancer, and I expect a good prognosis, but one never knows. And I'd like to talk to you about some plans that I think we need to have in place. Okay. Step 4, talking. How many of you had conversations with people who matter to you about your wishes for your care? So again, I asked you about do your advanced care planning yourself. And I just want to get you to think about, have I had this conversation with somebody about what I would like if I can't speak for myself in a medical situation? And I want you to reflect upon, was it hard to have these conversations with that person? And I would suggest, if it was really hard to have that conversation with that person, and it continues to be difficult, maybe somebody else might be a better substitute decision maker than the person you initially chose. They, as Margie said, you know, different people have different views and may not want to talk about you passing away or being in trouble. And when you had this conversation with somebody about planning your advanced care planning or talking about what if, did you prepare, or did you just say, I got something to talk to you about, do you have a minute? Or did you prep yourself? And I think those are important things to think about. I tend to be comfortable with certain people, and sometimes the natural conversation will just present itself. You know, it could be a TV show, it could be a movie that makes you cry, and you know, and what would happen if that happened to me? I know we did have this conversation at a dinner party once. I'm not sure that I would recommend this, but but it certainly got the conversation going in terms of what people would be prepared to do and not prepared to do. And sometimes your spouse or your partner may not be the person that would be your substitute decision maker, given their thoughts about it, or this might be something that just they can't handle. So for those of you who've already had this conversation, is there anybody that would like to volunteer how it went? And if you had an opportunity to do it differently, what would you do different in terms of preparing for advanced care planning?
I'm certainly doing it differently with my mom.
Okay.
Yeah, like my mom is 78. She definitely has some health challenges that have kind of sprung upon her relatively quickly, and they've impacted her ability to be independent. And so we're actively having, you know, very intimate and vulnerable conversations, so that while she can, because she can advocate for herself and have her wishes known, and, you know, give her I think the respect and the reverence that's due to anybody that, you know, is capable of having that conversation, so that her wishes can be identified. They can be, you know, we're certainly not doing this in the dark like we kind of did with my dad. And it's a lot easier with my mom after having gone through some of this stuff with my dad. Now I realize, okay, these are really important and tough conversations, but it's good to make her feel loved and valued by giving her the opportunity to talk about what her wishes are.
Okay, excellent. So I'm just going to make a suggestion, if you don't mind me being directive. You've all come to this workshop, and then when you leave this workshop, you're going to encounter other people, and to get the conversation started, you could just say, hey, I was at this workshop. And we talked about advanced care planning. So do you know what that is? And you know, those kinds of things. So you can use this activity as a jumping off point to starting maybe a somewhat difficult conversation. Thanks, Reed. So next, okay, step number 5. Rosalie, have I called upon you recently? Would you mind going through that?
No problem. Step
Thank
5,
you.
record. Why? While there is no legal requirement to write down and record your wishes, but recording can help. You remember what you thought and said. Your substitute decision maker can remember the details of the discussion, and it will provide evidence of your wishes if there's a disagreement about your care. I think this is really important because just because you think they understood, they may not.
Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so Rosalie, can you just do this review for us as well?
Sure. Remember, advanced care planning is not a one-time event. It's important to review your advanced care plan regularly. Why? Your understanding of your health and treatment options can change over time, as can your values and goals. Whenever your health, life, or circumstances change, and how, use the same 5-step process. If anything changes, tell your substitute decision maker and the people close to you. I am guilty of this, of not doing this. When I did bring up a recent health situation with my son, the next conversation we had was, well, if you need treatment and you need support, are you ever going to consider moving back to Ontario? And I went, oh my gosh, here we started, move back home or move somewhere. And I'm thinking, no, I have a really good support system here. So this is why it's really important for me, because I don't want to be moved.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Rosalie, and it makes me
You're
think about what Margie said earlier in terms of like you could have had somebody on your advanced care plan who's moved away. So now you need somebody to be around and for sure and available. So when you do your advanced care planning, it's good to review it, just like it's good to review all your legal docs. It's just part of the planning process. So if we could just move to the next slide. Okay, so one of the things that I'm just going to step out of my role as a presenter, but what you would do as a presenter is you'd have the advanced care planning booklet, okay, and it's really important to have that information available, and you ask people to complete the evaluation form, and that's really, really important to do that. I would not give out the booklet at the beginning of the workshop. You keep all the material.
I have to
Because,
say that.
sorry?
I know it's Margie, but I had to say that because I think that is so important, because people are not listening and they're looking through it, and I would never, I say that all the time. I'm not giving you a booklet yet.
Right. The other thing, and I just want to check with Beth, do we have any more slides, Beth?
That's the last